to the Business Call to Action 10th Annual Forum. I am Luciana, the Deputy Editor of Institutional Investor, and I am privileged to be your MC for today. Thank you for being here together, wherever here is for you. COVID-19 could push more than 70 million people into extreme poverty this year alone, which would be the first global increase since 1998. The dire health and human cost of the global pandemic will be amplified by economic recessions, which are projected to hit most of the countries around the world. Of course, low-income regions bear the greatest risk of long-term damage. But pandemics also have a way of sharpening minds and sending us running from our own silos. We are all in this together. From the beginning of the vaccine quest, for example, governments, private companies, and research institutions have looked desperately to one another for help, and they have found it. Inclusive business models, which are another focus of today, turn profits and share value with the low-income communities that make up their business partners, collaborators, and clients. They also create resilience, a third theme of BCTA's 10th anniversary forum. As we spend the day reimagining resilience and build forward together, I invite you to recognize the innovation and sheer force of will that made this virtual event happen today. It is true resilience in action. So if a Zoom connection drops or a Deputy Director General's cat wanders into the frame, please just enjoy the moment, because next year, we're all back stuck in those endless custom lines at JFK and going through the ritual pat-downs at the General Assembly. Now, it is my sincere delight to introduce the head of Business Call to Action, Ms. Luciana Aguiar. For 15 years, Ms. Aguiar has been developing strategies to serve the people at the base of the socioeconomic pyramid, delivering these methods to institutions such as the IDB, CGAP, and major foundations. She was, for the last 4 years, the private sector and development and innovation specialist for the United Nations Development Program in Brazil. In that role, she focused on inclusive business, finance for development, and private social investment. Ms. Aguiar, thank you so much for bringing us together today. Unmute. We have you on mute right now.
Apologies for this. So we are honored to welcome all of you today, participants, donors, UN representatives, panelists, member companies, partners, and colleagues to the Business Call to Action Annual Forum on the sidelines of this year's 75th United Nations General Assembly. This BCtA Annual Forum is special in a number of ways. Not only this event marks BCTA's 10th Annual Forum, but it's taking place against the backdrop of an extraordinary time in history. A time when we believe the themes of today's event, resilience, inclusive business, and innovation, could not be more important. This is the time to turn good intentions into action. We need inclusive business now more than ever. Business that can shape a more sustainable and inclusive economy, building the transition to more promising futures. The COVID-19 pandemic is having the most devastating impact on billions of people and vulnerable people who live in low and middle income countries, where Business Call to Action member companies are committed to developing innovative market-proven solutions to serve the most vulnerable, to address development priorities, and to achieve the SDGs. Today, I'm pleased to present a full agenda featuring live experts and innovators from around the globe, curated in collaboration with our event partners, with UNDP country offices in Colombia and Tunisia, and made possible by the generous support of our funding partners. This is BCTA's first annual forum, happening entirely online. online in a new space for many of us. To embrace this opportunity to learn from and connect with like-minded change makers around the globe, and to bring our diverse experience to today's discussions on how we can turn this unprecedented crisis into an opportunity. Thank you for joining us and for your commitment to building resilient economies and society, for your embracing the power of innovation and collaboration to achieve the SDGs, and mostly for your dedication to fighting poverty through inclusive business. I hereby kickstart BCtA 10th Annual Forum. Enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you. We are officially underway. Next, we'll hear from Ulrika Modéer, the UNDP's Assistant Administrator and Director of the Bureau of External Relations and Advocacy. She leads the organization in nurturing and growing key relationships with its member states, as well as with new and emerging partners. Ms. Modéer steers UNDP's communication and advocacy as it works to realize the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, let's hear from her.
Thank you and welcome, ladies and gentlemen around the world, to Business Call to Action's 10th Annual Forum on the sidelines of this year's virtual 75th session of the UN General Assembly. I had the pleasure of attending last year's 9th Annual Forum in person here in New York, while I believe that many of us miss the face-to-face interaction and the opportunity for spontaneous connections that come with an in-person event. I believe that this virtual space, open to a virtual and also global audience, is a good metaphor for what we all as UNDP, as Business Call to Action, as business leaders, as government, and not least all of us everyday people with families and dreams are actually trying to achieve. And that is inclusion and equal access to opportunities. Inside this virtual meeting point, everyone here is welcome to participate, to learn something new, to make valuable connections, to contribute their voice, to grow regardless of who or where they are. This is the kind of universal inclusion and access that we're striving for. This is the kind of the world envisioned by the Sustainable Development Goals. However, we all know that outside today's virtual event, a global pandemic continues to rage in our societies. Our planet pleads to heal, and millions of people lack access to opportunities, goods and services because of where they're born, the color of their skin, their gender, and more. Even before the pandemic hit, women were held back from economic participation and equal access to resources. COVID-19 has only exacerbated this gulf in gender inequality. A recent analysis commissioned by UNDP and UN Women revealed that 47 million more women will be pushed into poverty as a result of COVID-19. And by 2021, for every 100 men aged 25 to 34 living in extreme poverty, that is living on less than $1.90 a day, there will be 180 women, a gap that is expected to increase to 121 women per 100 men by 2030. Such figures demonstrate the urgent need to put women at the heart of the pandemic recovery, as agents of change, to once and for all remove barriers to professional growth and economic participation, to support vulnerable women and families, and to ensure the long-term social and economic prosperity for everyone. Having long understood the business's benefits of an inclusive approach, from expanded market share to a more diversified supply chain, inclusive businesses are seasoned experts in operating sustainable business models while improving the lives of low-income communities, including women and families. These inclusive businesses now stand ready to protect stakeholders in their value chains from falling further into poverty at the hands of COVID-19, and to safeguard important gains in access and inclusion for poor and underserved populations. Among such impactful inclusive businesses are Business Call to Action member companies who foster opportunities, expand access, and improve lives through innovative inclusive business solutions that are sustainable, that are replicable, and also scalable. Business Call to Action, BCtA, was launched in 2008 through a unique partnership of governments and UNDP with a membership at that time of just 18 companies. It has since grown to over 250 diverse companies operating inclusive business models in 73 countries. Today, we will have the pleasure of hearing firsthand from BCtA member companies who have leveraged their expertise operating in difficult environments to rise to the moment and demonstrated their commitment achieving the Sustainable Development Goals even in the face of COVID. Member companies like Aguiar and AfriPads are safeguarding access to affordable healthcare and women's hygiene products. Members Codifon and Pragati are ensuring that women and youth have opportunities to build relevant skills for the future of work, even in the midst of pandemic-induced lockdowns. And companies Thrive Microfinance and Crystal and Pollinate Group are protecting and expanding access to finance and enabling women entrepreneurs to stay afloat. It is a pleasure to welcome these inspiring business leaders and the rest of the global audience of partners, protectors, and provider of access and inclusion. And it is encouraging to see so much of today's agenda focus on forward-looking solutions for long-term resilience through inclusive businesses and innovative partnerships. Lastly, I would like to conclude with a reminder that UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, stands ready as a partner in engaging the private sector in immediate pandemic response and long-term sustainable development, and in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. This is made possible by the generous contribution and the commitment of our partners, whom I thank and warmly welcome here today. Our teams at Business Call to Action, the Istanbul International Center for Private Sector in Development, and the SDG Finance Sector Hub are all striving to ensure that UNDP is meeting the world's challenges head-on, creating impact through collaboration, and directing much-needed resource and expertise toward building a brighter, more resilient, and inclusive future. I encourage all to take full advantage of the possibilities that partnering with UNDP represents for building back better or building forward in this critical decade towards 2030. Thank you all. Make the most out of this global audience of inclusive innovators and visionaries, and enjoy the day.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I think we have some technical issues and lost our Luciana for the day. She's now back. Anyway, I'm so happy to be on this event. Thank you for giving Sida and me the opportunity to speak at this opening of the Business Call to Action annual forum. Did you know that the agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals was adopted exactly 5 years ago as of tomorrow? And I think we have all reflected intensively on how we can implement and realize it. Some of us might have tested and perhaps reiterated once or even several times to find smart and efficient ways to contribute to sustainable development. We have done so in an ever-changing environment, but the COVID-19 pandemic has profoundly changed the landscape of development. The consequences are dramatic and span over several aspects of life through direct and indirect channels. I know this will be a central topic of the discussions here today. Part of Sida's mission is to stimulate sustainable development. And what does that mean in practice? That means that we, as a development cooperation agency, need to make sure that we enable other actors to contribute to the elimination of poverty and reach the goals of the Agenda 2030 through our operations. Sida has a long history of working with the private sector, from supporting large private sector development programs to initiatives that aim to sustainable business development, promote an improved and inclusive business climate, and enhance opportunities for economic participation and entrepreneurship among people living in poverty. We always put the emphasis on women and young people. From our experience, governments support inclusive business by enabling them to enter and operate the market, helping them to integrate the base of the pyramid into value chains, and empowering the base of the pyramid themselves to participate in the value chains. Developing an integrated policy approach is key while engaging all relevant stakeholders and avoiding preferential treatment of individual companies not to distort the market. While financing is a common challenge for inclusive business, different types of inclusive businesses require different kinds of support. Coordination between governments and development finance institutions enables to bridge such a gap. Sida, as an actor, has a number of tools to support inclusive business. We work with guarantees, challenge funds, public-private development partnership, and I know you will kick off this day with talking about that, and also coordination and gathering of investors and business leaders to learn, share experiences and communication around achieving the SDGs. Sida's work is guided by Sweden's feminist foreign policy. This policy paved the way for greater emphasis on the role of women in development. In practice, it means that the whole Swedish Foreign Service applies a systematic gender perspective in all operations in order to promote gender equality and to enhance foreign policy objectives. It can be summarized in 3 R's: rights, representation, and resources. For inclusive business, this means an explicit and conscious ambition to realize the gains of involving women in the economy as producers, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and customers. At Sida, we believe that inclusive businesses are the backbone to development. But it's the focus on responsible inclusive business that is important to Sida, because those we want to include are often our most prioritized target groups, those at the base of the economic pyramid. I say responsible inclusive business to underline some things that cannot be taken for granted: human rights, decent work, undertakings towards anti-corruption, and actions against environmental degradation. Responsible inclusive business also means putting a specific emphasis on addressing gender structures and actively be part of the accelerating a development towards gender equality. All these things are absolutely decisive if we want to be serious about creating positive change. The power of inclusive business is really evident here today, not only from the demand for change, but from the strong commitment to action that brought so many businesses to this virtual room. So let me conclude with this conviction: achieving the SDGs necessitates more resources, new innovative approaches and solutions, as well as strong partnerships. Therefore, I'm excited to see representation of so many different actors gather here and look forward to discussing, inspiring, and learning from each other. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Dr. Jonsson Cissé. Now, let's dive in. Coming up next is a short film on BCTA's Impact Champions. At the start of 2019, 25 member companies joined the program to conduct in-depth impact measurement and management with an SDG lens, benefiting from the hands-on support of BCtA. We will hear from 12 of those member companies on their impact management process. Then our opening panel session will promise, I think, to be exceptional. It examines the private sector's future in sustainable development. Next, we've gathered stars of the COVID-19 response to share in live rapid-fire case studies how their businesses ensured that even in the midst of crippling global crisis, no one gets left behind. Then you'll hear from me again ahead of our keynote by University of Michigan professor Ted London. And to close the morning agenda, we've turned the spotlight onto inclusive businesses, what they actually are, why investors love them, and how inclusive businesses are crucial to build forward better.